Good evening to all. We are now live on YouTube via Internationalism Editorials. So, in the live session, we will discuss about the utility of public interest litigations and if the misuse of public interest litigations during the times of COVID-19. So, being the founder of the Judicin Talks, I pass the baton to our moderator for today, Mr. Vaibhav Dwivedi, Associate Editor for Internationalism. Vaibhav, you can start the meeting and you can start the session.
Okay, thank you, Abhivardhan. Good evening, all. Good evening, sir. Sir, am I audible to you?
Hello?
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes. Hello?
Shall we begin? Sir, am I audible to you? Shall we begin?
Yeah, just now it's audible. Earlier I could not hear you.
Okay, sir. Okay, that's no problem. We can begin from here. First of all, at the very outset, thank you so much, sir, for having agreed to address our viewers. We're extremely privileged to have you speaking to us today. May I take a couple of minutes to introduce sir to our viewers? Sir is a designated senior advocate. Sir. Vrinda, make sure that sir listens to what I'm speaking. Keep the microphone close to the laptop speaker. Vrinda, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Make sure the sir is able to hear me on. Okay. So I'm beginning. Sir is a designated senior advocate practicing primarily before the Supreme Court of India. Right after graduating in law from Government Law College, Bombay, in the year 1965, he started practicing before the Bombay High Court and later shifted to the Supreme Court of India in the year 1969. Sir was registered as an advocate on record with the Supreme Court of India in the year 1971 and served as the president of the Supreme Court Advocates on Record Association, the SCORA, for 10 years till the year 2004. He was designated as a senior advocate by the Supreme Court of India in the year 2007. He also served as the president of the Supreme Court Bar Association for 6 terms. Sir has had a very wide range of clientele over the years, ranging from political luminaries like the President of India, Vice President of India, Chief Ministers of various states, Union Cabinet Ministers, to top corporations for whom he has appeared before various kinds of courts. In the year 2012, Sir was conferred with Padma Shri, the 4th highest civilian award in the country, by the Honorable President of India for his service to the nation. Sir is presently the President of Indian Society of International Law and Confederation of Indian Bar. Today, Sir will be speaking on public interest litigations in general and how they have been misused during this COVID-19 times. With these words, without further ado, I would request Sir to kindly take over and address our viewers. Sir.
Hello.
Sir, you can begin, sir.
Can you speak louder, please?
Sir, I finished the introduction, but kindly begin the address, sir. Kindly begin the address. Sir, am I audible?
So you can begin the address now.
Yeah, you want me to start? Paresh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
please.
Well, as far as the public interest litigation is concerned, there was a time when the court used to say that unless you are directly affected by whatever you want to challenge, you cannot go to the court. And that was for a long time. The court was very clear. There is a story. You may have a good case, but you have nothing to lose, so we will not entertain. That changed in 1980s. Supreme Court said, no, we will allow people to file cases in public interest litigation, not for the person who files the case for his own case, but he wants certain things to be done. Now, that was started initially against the governments, central government and state government. And the courts permitted them that, all right, you have not got any harm. You don't need anything from the court, but you want court to do certain things which will affect large number of people, and that is how they allowed public interest litigation. Normal court litigation is always A versus B. A who is agreed from B will go against B. But in this matter, the Supreme Court started allowing public interest litigation. And in the beginning, there was a large number of judges who wanted to do it, but the majority of judges that time did not like public interest litigation. Even today, there are two sets of judges, some who love public interest litigation and some who say that it's not the business of the court to have a public interest litigation. But a stage has now come where public interest litigation is accepted, and mainly the Supreme Court does for matters because the Supreme Court judgment will bind all over India, whereas a High Court judge is bind all over India, but there is limitation to the High Court judgment. And therefore, there are a large number of people who point to the Supreme Court that please pass a public interest litigation. It is going on under Article 32 in the Supreme Court. In the High Courts, you can file under Article 226, and there are various civil and criminal and constitutional issues which are decided by the public interest litigation. But the court also does not allow the misuse of public interest litigation. If some party goes to the court for a public interest and he is really wanting to do something against his enemies or against person whom he does not like, etc., then the court will not allow that to be done. The person who approaches with the public interest litigation must be a genuine person interested to achieve this public interest litigation. But if someone wants to do something good for himself, that is a private interest litigation and not a public interest litigation, then the court will refuse to entertain it. Court also finds out as to what is the type of person who has come to ask for the public interest litigation. If the court finds that the person is not a bona fide person or is doing it for getting something, sometimes some people file PIL to exploit the other side, to get some money from them, to get certain find good work from them, etc. Then the court will say, we will not entertain public interest litigation at your instance, because you are not a genuine person to file public interest litigation. And the courts also can file public interest litigation on its own. It does not need a petitioner to come to the court. Sometimes the court reads something in the newspaper or sees something on the television and he says, oh, this is very bad, this is no good. So the court will, in the next morning in the court, will say, we want to take up one public interest litigation, and will normally ask some of the senior advocate who is present in the court that, yes, Mr. So-and-so, would you like to assist us? And no counsel will say no to assist the court in a public interest litigation. And thereafter, the court also does not have time to investigate, to find out, etc. So sometimes the court also tells the advocate that you go to this place, find out from that place whether these allegations are correct, is it happening, is it not happening. So that all work will be done by the public interest litigant, and after that he will come out and inform the court that this is what has happened. But of course the court cannot pass any judgment without hearing the affected parties. So there will be some people who will be affected if a judgment is delivered by the Supreme Court on a public interest litigation. So the court will give notice to such person. Sometimes it is not possible to know as to who are the persons who are affected, that the court can put it in the newspapers and say that the Supreme Court is going to decide the following issues before them. Any person who wants to come either to support this issue or to oppose this issue is welcome and participate. So those are, any person who does not want the public interest litigation to be done can also come to the court and say that this will not be, you should not do it. The court will hear both the sides and thereafter pass the judgment. A stage has by now come that public interest litigation is accepted by people and there are a large number of newspapers, and they come out and they put on the newspaper that such a wrong thing is happening at this place by these people, and that case the court will pick up that newspaper information as a reason to have the public interest litigation, and the court will call upon the senior counsel, or sometimes they may not, the lawyers may not be sufficiently knowing the facts, and therefore they may even ask some other advocate who is not a lawyer, or someone who knows those facts. They can call upon any person in whom the court will have confidence that you are not a lawyer, but we want information. The lawyer will not be able to give us the information, and we request you to give us the information. Sometimes the information may not be readily available. In that case, the court can ask one or more persons that you go to that particular place and you find out what is happening and submit us a report. After the report is submitted, the court will hear all the parties, those who are supporting, those who are opposing, and then they will deliver a judgment. A large number of judgments have been by now there, and it is not difficult for anyone who is interested in solving the problem to go to the court. There is exploitation of poor people by large number of rich people. Now, how do you find out? The court will advertise in the newspaper and ask anyone who knows that this is happening, please come to us. And sometimes court will also ask certain lawyers that you go yourself to that particular place, find out what is happening, and submit a report. So the public interest litigation now is very much there, and people are very happy because it's not possible for the poor people to go to the court and tell the court how to do it. And secondly, the court normally people are not in Delhi, where the Supreme Court, and therefore they cannot come to the Supreme Court. Therefore, they're writing a letter or something appearing in the newspaper is taken up as to commence the public interest litigation, and large number of judgments are there now, and it is not difficult for the court to pass judgment. In the good old days, it was very difficult. The judges did not know how to go about, what to do, to what extent they can do. But today, the sky is the limit. If the judges find that some injustice is done, then they entertain the public interest litigation, and they come out with the judgment. In fact, they also sometimes give the judgments also in the newspapers to tell people that you should know that such a judgment is passed, and if you find that any parties are violating this judgment, then bring to the notice of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also appoints some of the advocates to go to certain places to find out whether what is alleged is actually happening or not. And sometimes after the judgment also they can appoint advocates to go to find out whether what they were supposed to do after the judgment of Supreme Court, have they stopped doing or not. Therefore, it is now very, very well considered. Now, initially, the public interest litigation started from Supreme Court, but now all the high courts in India, they also come out with the public interest litigation. There are certain local issues which are affected not to all India, but may be affected in that particular state. So it is now all the high courts in India, they come out with a public interest litigation. There are one public interest litigation will be somebody will come and approach the court and say that yes, here I am. I am passing a public interest litigation, and I am ready to give the necessary information. That is one. Second is the court itself, suo motu, when it comes to read from the newspapers, from television, etc., that something very wrong is happening to large number of people, then the court on its own motion, suo motu it is called, will take up a case, and in invite the lawyers, invite some specialists who may not be lawyers, but they know certain things more than the lawyers would know as far as that particular aspect is concerned. Then those people will come, and the court does pass very effective orders. The court also many times knows that they may pass a judgment, but it will not be implemented. And therefore, the court can also appoint some people to go to that place, find out whether the judgment which we have given, is it being implemented or it is just on paper. And therefore, if it is not implemented, then the court will also ensure that it is implemented. The court can ask either the police authorities, can ask either the High Court to ensure that it is done within their jurisdiction, or to ask some people who are supposed to ensure such a business or the work to be done. The Supreme Court or the High Court in the PIL will direct them that please go and find out and let us know whether the work is being done according to the judgment of the Supreme Court, and if it is not done, who are responsible for not doing, and then they can call upon those parties who are violating the judgment of PIL to come to the court, and it will be contempt of the court for them not to comply with the judgments of the Supreme Court, and that is also happening. And today there is a large number of people are also aware, but there are some people who file public interest litigation for their own good, and that is called private interest litigation. When the court comes to the notice that someone has not come in the public interest, but in the private interest, his own interest, then the court will refuse to entertain this public interest litigation. Therefore, it is very, very important that it is not to be misused, because public interest litigation, if it is misused, then it will be very bad, because the court is going out of its way. Court will not insist on anyone filing the court fees. Court will not insist on any proof to be done in the normal course by saying that you go to the lower court, have the evidence, and court does it. But therefore, the court wants to do this only for the good of public interest litigation and not for the private interest litigation. Some people also call the PIL paisa interest litigation. Paisa, the person will make money through public interest. That's so paisa interest litigation is also not permissible by the court. If there is any question, you can ask me. Hello.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a very diverse and insightful address, clearing so many
Louder,
doubts.
please.
Brinda, please make sure that my voice reaches to sir, or you may convey the same message.
Yeah, sir, I'll repeat the question that Weber was saying. So Weber, you can continue.
I can just start with the question.
Yeah.
My question is,
What is the
make sure that
question?
my question directly reaches to sir, because it's a long question. Or I've sent you the question, you can, put forward to sir.
Okay, just a second. In the meanwhile, you can repeat the question for the audience. I'm just.
Okay, the question is, the Solicitor General of India, I hope that sir is also listening to it. Sir, am I audible?
Hear you, but I can't hear the other man who is talking.
Yes, sir.
Brenda, you'll have to repeat. Brenda, you will have to address, sir. I am, for the audience, reiterating the question.
Okay,
you can reiterate.
Yeah. I'm just.
I can hear you clearly, but I can't hear what.
I am repeating the
All right,
question for you,
So
sir.
you repeat. Yeah.
Yes.
You can repeat.
The question is, the Solicitor General of India has recently used phrases like professional PIL shops and self-employment generating petitions in context of seemingly frivolous PILs filed in the Supreme Court. How do you see a top law officer of the country using phrases like this? Is he justified in using them in view of the present situation?
Well, I tell you, if that, what he says, it can be true also. Now, if it is true, then he is justified in saying that, because this can't be misused. PIL cannot be misused. There are a large number of judgments which have said so, and therefore, if the Solicitor General is making a statement, now if it is factually correct, then he is entitled to make a statement. If it is factually not correct, then he is not entitled to make a statement. So since I I won't know factually whether what he has said is correct, is justified or not. But if it is misused, then certainly what he says is perfectly all right. But if it is not misused, then he should not say that.
Okay, Vrinda, would you please direct this? The Solicitor General said this in Supreme Court in the context of Prashant Bhushan, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, the lawyer, filing a PIL in the Supreme Court for helping the migrant workers. So could you please direct this?
Prashant Bhushan.
Yes, Prashant Bhushan. Sir, could you, may I just repeat the question, sir? Mr. Prashant Bhushan is a practicing lawyer.
I can't hear, so if you
Sir, Vrinda will be telling the question.
Yeah.
Vrinda, could you please?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Vrinda,
Vaibhav,
could you please?
can you please just repeat the question?
The question is, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, who is a practicing advocate in the Supreme Court of India. The Solicitor General of India said this in context of Mr. Prashant Bhushan, who filed a petition in the Supreme Court regarding helping of migrant workers. So, in a retort, in a retaliation from the government side, the Solicitor General said this. So, I was just trying to put this in context. So, I was asking the context.
You see, I'll tell you, I won't be able to say in the present case whether Prashant Bhushan is doing it rightly or wrongly. But there are many lawyers today, good lawyers, good named lawyers, they also misuse PIL. So I cannot say in this case whether Prashant Bhushan is misusing or not misusing. If he is misusing, then what the Solicitor General says he is entitled to say. If he is not misusing, then the Solicitor General is not supposed to say. So, but let me tell you, because of any name, you can't say that he is right. There are many people who misuse PIL for various purposes, not necessarily monetary, otherwise. So I will not go by a statement that the Solicitor General cannot make a statement. The Solicitor General can make the statement if Prashant Bhushan is doing what he is saying. Solicitor General cannot make such a statement if Prashant Bhushan is doing the correct thing. But I will not accept or assume that Prashant Bhushan says is correct or not correct. Either way, I will not be able to say. But there are misuse. There are a large number of Supreme Court judgments which has come to the conclusion that this PIL was a misused PIL. So that it is not that it does not happen. It does happen. But in this case, Prashant Bhushan is doing it or not, I won't know. So I can't make a statement. But there are misuse of PIL by a large number of people, and some of them are good lawyers. But even then they do it. So therefore, your question I can't answer whether Solicitor General is right or wrong. The answer is if the Solicitor General says is correct, then he is right. He is entitled to make the statement. If it is not there, then he should not make the statement.
Okay, so thank you. So it was indeed a very, very enriching speech. Vrinda, you may go ahead with the second question. You have the text of the question.
Yeah. So the next question is, Justice Deepak Gupta, who recently retired from the Supreme Court, also expressed concerns over the quality of PILs being filed with the Supreme Court.
Quality of
PILs being filed with the Supreme Court. In particular, during this crisis time. So how do you see this?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, what he has said is true, but is not true in all the cases. In some cases, if it is someone does not prepare and just go to the PIL, then the court sometimes refuses to entertain and say that, well, what you have said is not enough, what you have said is not even good enough for us to take the action. So this has been happening even earlier. There are some people who are very genuine people, and they come out with all the facts and figures. There are some people who do not do that. So I will not again say about what Justice Deepak what he has stated. It can be correct question of law, but actually it should not be misused. There is no doubt that there are a large number of judgments where the Supreme Court have come to the conclusion that this PIL was a misused PIL. This PIL was a public interest litigation, was a judges have said something. Therefore, I can't make a statement without knowing the facts of a particular case. But there are misuse of PIL. So it's not as if someone goes and say, hey, this is my PIL. Therefore, he's always right. He may be wrong. He may be private interest litigation. He may be doing it for money. He may be doing for various purpose. He wants to attack his enemy, so he's doing. So large number of people are misusing PIL. So I will not accept that because someone has filed a PIL, it should be accepted by the judges. So just when a retired judge who just retired, when he says that it should not be misused, then he's right. He does not say don't have PIL, but he is entitled to caution that please don't allow PIL to be misused. Which is absolutely correct. And there are hundreds of judgments of Supreme Court and High Court saying that it should not be allowed to be misused. PIL should not be allowed to be misused.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So we have we have another question. So can you please tell if parliamentary privileges have been diluting the very essence of rule of law?
No, I tell you. Here again, it is both ways. The parliament is the highest body for the as far as the making of laws, etc. are concerned. They also need certain protection and the powers. So all these issues, nothing can be said as good or bad. It is not black or white. In case if it is misused, then it is wrong. If it is not misused, it is not wrong. But it is Parliament also has certain protection, has certain rights. But if the Parliament misuses it, then it will be challenged in the court, because any decision of the Parliament, by their making a law or any other things, if they do anything, then the courts have power. The writ courts, that is the Supreme Court under Article 32 and High Courts under Article 226, they have a right to strike down what the Parliament has done. Even the constitutionally decided the judgments, the laws made by the Parliament, even if it's unanimously passed by Parliament, the court can say this is no law, because it is either because there is no competence, because certain laws can be made by Parliament, certain laws can be made by state government, state legislatures. Now, if it is not done by the right authority, then they can strike down. Secondly, the Supreme Court says, yes, Parliament has made this law, but that law violates the fundamental rights of the citizens, or that law they have no competence to make a law. It is open for the Supreme Court or High Court to strike down the laws. So it is not as if merely because Parliament has said, the court cannot interfere. And as far as Parliament says something, any citizen also has a right to criticize that Parliament has done, but to strike down, they can't strike down. The citizen can't strike down, but citizen can certainly write an article, can speak and say that this judgment, this decision or the laws made by Parliament is unconstitutional, it is wrong, it is unjust, it is unfair. They have a right to say. And then Parliament can say, good luck to you. You may tell us, but we are right, we have done the right thing. And then you go to the court, and court will decide whether Parliament law is unconstitutional or not.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have another question. Sir, can you please tell us about the extendability of right to silence in the civil law?
Right to?
Silence in the civil law.
Right to silence?
Silence, yes.
Silence means not talking.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no. I tell you, every citizen has a right to speak. Now, you can speak, but there are restrictions on speaking, that you can't do something which is contrary to law, etc., etc. Likewise, you are right when you are told and you are asked to give an answer, then you don't have a right to, you can say, sorry, I don't want to give any answer to this. I want to be silent. But if there is a law which compels you to speak, then you can't say I'll remain silent. So the silence is something which is possible for someone to say that I don't want to give my opinion, so I want to be silent whether this law is correct, not correct, it is rightly made, wrongly made. I don't want to say. Now you can be silent, but if it is your duty, for instance, it comes before the court a question whether this is valid, not valid, then the court must decide that it is valid, not valid. So silence is also okay. There is just as you have a right to speak, you have a right not to speak also.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we have another question. Can Arbitration Council of India slowly take away the power of the courts?
Well, as far as arbitration is concerned, we have a Arbitration Act which authorizes the parties by consent to go to the arbitrators, and the award which is passed by them can be challenged in the court only on limited questions. But the arbitration is by consent, so you can't say that you can't go for arbitration because there is a law which says you can go to the arbitrators, and it is open for parties to appoint arbitrators, one single arbitrator by consent, or one party appoints one Mr. A as arbitrator, other party will appoint Mr. B as arbitrator, and A and B together will appoint the third arbitrator. So that the three arbitrators will give a decision. Now, after the amendment to the Arbitration Act, once the arbitration award is passed, you don't have to go to court. It will be binding unless someone goes and challenges it. It is open for them to challenge the arbitration award, saying that there are certain limited grounds on which you can strike down. The courts can strike down the arbitration award. But the latest trend is that the judges don't want to interfere with the arbitration award, because if you have chosen that you will not go to court but you will go to this arbitration panel, then you must accept it. But it will all depend on the grounds. What are the grounds on which the challenge of the award is made?
Okay, but sir, there's a follow-up question to this. What if, in case the courts still have a command over arbitration proceedings, then won't it defeat the entire purpose?
But you see, I'll tell you, in arbitration throughout the world, it can't be the final word, because final word will be the Supreme Court, for instance. But you cannot have a final word, because if something is, but the Parliament amendment made about few years back have given the reasons, very few reasons on which the courts can strike down the award. So more and more the courts are not interfering with the award. But there has to be a place where someone can go to challenge the award. So it is not that, but the court, now the Parliament has also told the court that don't interfere generally, except that something is certain very, the award is very perverse, etc. The courts do not interfere. But this power is given throughout the world to challenge the award, but by the courts.
So, sir, do you think that this way a balance could be struck, like when the courts have a command over arbitration proceedings? So this way a balance can be struck between this?
Well, there is a balance created by the law itself. As I said earlier, there were too many challenges to the arbitral award. And in the amendments which have been made few years back, they said now there are limited grounds on which you can strike down the award. But the difficulty is that when someone challenges the award, it takes a long time in the court. And if you go and challenge in the Delhi High Court or High Court, any High Court, then you can go to Supreme Court. So long time is wasted, because the whole idea of arbitration is expeditious disposal of matters. But after the expeditious disposal, it does not take place because you will challenge the award in High Court, Supreme Court. And that is what is happening. And large number of challenge to the award remains for large number of years, which is very unfortunate, and that nullifies the whole purpose of the arbitration.
Okay, so keeping all of this in mind, so how do you think that PILs have a future in India?
PIL is
Keeping all of the situations in mind, like present COVID-19 situation in mind, and the conditions of migrants, and giving due respect to the migrants, what do you think would be the future of PILs in India?
well, the future of PIL is very, very bright. And whenever anyone comes to the court and brings to the notice of the court, then the courts do interfere, and it is quite bright. In fact, some people are criticizing judges that they are doing too much of PIL, but there are views, some views which say it is very good judges are doing. There are some views saying that the judges have no business to do this work of PIL. But it all depends on the facts of the case, and also it depends on the judges to judges. Some judges love to interfere, and some judges don't want to interfere in PIL.
Okay, and while we're on the topic of COVID-19 situation, so there's a question regarding the same. Do you think that the present COVID-19 situation, and with due respect to the migrants, would attract international human rights laws?
Well, I tell you, it has nothing to do with COVID, because it is whatever happens. Of course, now situation today has become very, very difficult, and therefore the problems are much more. But it will not change anything. Law remains the same, but when there are certain facts where large number of people are in difficulties, people can't go out, people can't earn money. Now, how do they eat their food if they have no money? Now, therefore, these situations will come to an end. I hope sooner than later. But you can't say that because of COVID anything else especially happening to your issues.
So just before the session is ended, there is a follow-up question to this statement. Is there a significant differentiation made between the rights of internal and the international migrants?
Well, it can be made, because an Indian citizen has all the rights, fundamental rights and other rights they have got. A foreigner does not have those rights. Now, number one, if the foreigner has come to India, number one will be whether he has come lawfully, whether he has got the visa, he has come. Number two, whether the purpose for which they came is correct. Number three, are they misusing their presence in India? If they are misusing, then the government has all the rights against them. So the rights of Indian citizens are much larger and more than the foreigners. So when a foreigner comes to India, he cannot say that give me all the rights which the Indian citizens have. No, they have no such right. And supposing a foreigner has come to India for a wrong reason, they say that, okay, I have to go for a particular thing, and they have come to do something else. Then also the courts, the government has a lot of right to take action against them, throw them out of the country, etc. So you can't compare the citizens and non-citizens. Non-citizens have no rights, but if they have come here, the government cannot also misuse with them. But if they have come illegally, then it's open for government to throw them out. Or if they have done some offenses committed in India, then they can be prosecuted, they can be jailed, and when the case is pending also, the court has right to put them in the jail. The authorities may put on jail, but they have a right, although they are foreigners, to go to the court to get the bail. But if the court said no, we will not get the bail because your conduct is very bad, so that will all happen. But they do not have the same rights as citizens have.
Okay, thank you, sir. So before we part, I just want to ask a general question, and it would be, what mechanism would you suggest for the current legal education system to inculcate in the students better legal professional ethics?
Well, the students should learn. Number one, when the students become a lawyer, they will join some lawyers. Normally, you cannot immediately join the law to start practicing, because you'll not get, nobody will give you brief, because you are just a beginner. So you have to first learn, because learning in the to passing the law college is different from appearing in the court. So you have to learn how to appear in the court, how to argue, how not to argue. That you learn by you becoming a junior of a good lawyer, so that that lawyer you'll prepare for that senior. Senior will argue, and you will learn from what the senior has argued. Sometimes you learn from the mistake committed by your senior also, or sometimes you find that the court did not give relief because the way in which he argued or the way in which he had made the case was not correct. So a new lawyer who practices LLB, he has to learn a lot. What he has learned in the law college is one thing, but what he has to learn in the court is a totally different thing, because he has to learn. And if the lawyer does a lot of good work, then that he will become a good lawyer. And if he's not doing a good job, then he will not become a good lawyer.
Thank you so much for your insights, sir. We discussed a lot today, from COVID-19 situations and the utility of PILs to the misuse of PILs. I once again thank you on behalf of the team, and thank you for your insightful session today. And I'll just hand over the session to Abhivardhan.
Yeah, okay.
Abhivardhan?
Thank you, Vrinda, for passing the baton. It really has been a great pleasure to have you, sir, and your ages for this second episode of the
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really, thank you so much. And so we stop the live stream. Thank you so much for those who attended the session. And that's it. Thank you so much. Never be the same. Know the world beyond.